and today we have Jeanette as a guest. She's the founder of Hex.
We were a global company. I say global, there was like two of us. So I was working with a guy over in San Francisco, and so straight away we were already like on Zoom, on WhatsApp, like we didn't have an office. So when everybody kind of went remote, I was like, well, that's been us from day one. You know, I'm a migrant to Australia. I came here when I was very little, so I've grown up here since I was about 4 years old. Also the daughter of two international students. They moved from Malaysia to America to study their postgrad. I went to kindergarten in Japan. I just think that this like global context helps people figure out who they are. It helps them understand what they're bringing to the world, especially through work.
Welcome to Call Me Didi. I'm your host Diva.
And I'm your host,
Sanchi, and let's get into today's episode. This is our third episode in Melbourne, and today we have Jeanette as a guest. She's the founder of Hex. Welcome.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
We are going to quickly introduce you before we start the podcast. Jeanette is a speaker and education innovator based in Melbourne and raised across the US, Australia, Malaysia, and Japan. She's the co-founder of Hex, an EdTech company that's all about empowering the next generation of global leaders and shaking up the tertiary education sector. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really, really nice to have you here in Melbourne. I know you come from Adelaide, so how are you finding the city?
Good. We still live here actually.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So like it's so familiar then. Yeah.
Yeah, we both lived here at like separate times of our life. We didn't know each other then, but I lived here for about 5 years. So it's refreshing to be back, but it does feel like I'm surrounded by high rises. In Adelaide, there's like two high-rise buildings.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but we're just currently discovering. Well, but we had this conversation this morning that it's they both have their unique personalities and charms, and they both like, you know, you can appreciate both cities for what they have.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Melbourne. I've lived in a bunch of different cities around Australia, Sydney and Brisbane, but now here in Wurundjeri in Melbourne, up in Brunswick, and I live with my Springer Spaniel dog, a ginger cat, and a British man. So that is my current, my household situation.
I love that. Love Brunswick as well for the vibes. I used to live there as well. That's so cool. Well, thank you for coming on. I actually have a question for you. Mm-hmm. How are you today?
I'm pretty good today, actually. Yes. I mean, it's a Saturday, so kind of nice and relaxed. Had a very social Friday. We're in a long weekend. And the nerdiest thing is I'm actually really excited about getting some work done on this long weekend, because sometimes when I'm in my day-to-day, I've been trying to do this spreadsheet model for about 7 working days, and I've not had any time to do it. So I'm just like, yes, I get to spend like a whole 3 hours on my spreadsheet. So I'm really great.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. That's so nerdy.
Do you feel like that sometimes you struggle to balance your work and your personal life because of being a founder?
Yes, I think it's one of those things where you don't really ever turn off. Like even when I'm just scrolling TikTok, I'll find some marketing brand strategy and I'll send it to the Slack channel because I want somebody to see it. And so I think when you've got your own business, you never really stop thinking about how things in your life apply to it. So even chats that I might have with a friend over dinner, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's an interesting point. Maybe I should send that to somebody at work. And so I think the risk is maybe it's not so much for me because I love my business and I love what I do. So thinking about it is natural, but I think I need to remember that other people might not want to see all the things I send them. So I try to chuck it in Slack, so hopefully they're not looking at it over the weekend. And maybe they'll see it on Tuesday.
Yeah. But do you ever feel like you just want to switch off from the business and just enjoy like maybe, you know, your personal life a little bit more, or just be like...
I feel like you guys are calling me out straight away.
Oh, no.
You're like, what's your balance?
No, I guess it's something that I struggle with, especially because we work full time and then we do the podcast pretty much all weekend, and then and we live together and we're great friends. So sometimes it's like, wait, like where is my time and like our time to just hang out? And it's really hard to create boundaries, especially when you're doing something like this. So that's why.
No, it's so true. I mean, I think I do occasionally find times when I really just need to have like complete me time. I have been known to book myself just like an Airbnb for 2 nights and just go away by myself and just do some journaling, go for walks. Doesn't happen very often, but if I'm getting to a real stage of like I just need some thinking time, some quiet time, and I need to listen to an album and just like journal, like maybe once or twice a year I do that. And then other times just to kind of keep balance, I don't know. It's just the little things. It's the moment of like having a coffee in the backyard and listening to the birds, or just playing with my dog and like trying to not think I should be doing something else. But funnily enough, like, you know, I'm really good friends with my 2 co-founders. We've developed a beautiful friendship. And so sometimes we have to say, okay, I've just got my friend hat on now, or I've got the co-founder hat on. And so if you just want to have a vent about something that's not business related, just being okay with like listening to them as a friend rather than as a co-founder and colleague. So yeah, I think it's like labeling my moments and my relationship time, which is like, seems to work for me.
I like that sacred moments where you're just sitting and you're not thinking about anything else, and it's just you and your thoughts and you're letting them flow. Like I have that in my day as well. Like every morning I'll sit outside in my backyard and have my chai in peace and not having phone around me. And I'll just write and I'll just journal. And that's like one of my favorite times of my day, because I get to just sit and be. I don't have to do anything. I'm just there. And it's so surprising that hours go by. I don't realize a lot of the times on weekends, like 1 or 2 hours go by. I don't even realize. I'm just sitting there writing, sitting, watching around, thinking.
Wow.
And it's so fun. I love it. It really keeps me sane. Please don't judge me.
No, that sounds lovely.
Often you'll wake up and you're like, oh, Sanchi's not home. And then you go out in the backyard and she's sitting on the swing that we have.
Oh, really?
And it's just her. She doesn't have a phone or anything. She's just sitting there smiling away. And you're like, bro, like, what do you want?
There must be some really good stuff going on in your head.
I daydream quite a lot, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
See, I feel like I don't daydream as much as I should, but I strategize a lot. So I'm always like playing various games of chess in my head. I'm like, if I do this, or if I call that person, or if I kind of like try to schedule something, I'm always trying to like make puzzles work, I think, maybe problem solving rather than daydreaming is where my brain goes.
I actually love that. I want to ask you a bit more about Hex as well, and what inspired you to start Hex?
I didn't mean to start Hex in the form that it is today, actually. I mean, I was working at the bank at ANZ. I had it was a good job. It was fine. I was a little bit bored, but I think everyone has those moments in their corporate life. If you're in a corporate job, you'll know what I mean. But I think I just had this feeling that, first of all, there's a different kind of skill set out there that's not being celebrated. So there was like one little light bulb. And then there was another one, which was the people around me that I've seen in my 14 years of corporate work. Some of them are just playing games to a rule, like playing to a game to rules that they don't believe in, and they're just playing the game because they have to do that to be successful. And then I was also, I did this UX design course at General Assembly and met a whole bunch of creative technologists who just didn't quite know how to get their ideas into the world. And so I'm kind of stitching all these things together, going to different events, and I'm just like, can I help? Like, can I help here? Can I help bring creative tech ideas to life through business? Can I help people play to the rules of their own game? And then I was like, well, wait, if I want to help others to do that, I should do that myself. And really, the first thing we ever did for Hex was a 7-person program to San Francisco. Just seven students, and we took them across there for 2 weeks. And I just remember like the day that everyone got on the plane, I was like, I hope this is going to work. Like, I hope I can do something with these students to make it worth their time. And it just really snowballed. So I think it was just more of like a follow the market, follow the needs of the young people we were serving and the educators we were like working with, and just constant learning until we built something that seemed to have resonance and growing.
So did you feel like that the challenge was that people had ideas but they just didn't know how to implement them and actually work on them to get it to launching? Or was it like there was lack of people having ideas on what to do, and there were like more people who had that entrepreneurship fire in them but just didn't know what to do?
I think it's more that people were just following the steps that were laid out for them as children. It's like school, high school, some kind of tertiary, and then a job, and like just block. And I think I saw this linear pathway and so many people missing their potential, but not only for the individuals, but also like for the world. Like, we're missing their ideas, we're missing the economic growth, we're missing the social change. And so I was just thinking like, there's got to be a way to connect people with the skills and the mindsets and the tools that they need to make those ideas real. It doesn't always have to mean entrepreneurship, but it could just mean doing your career slightly differently or making different choices or knowing how to present yourself in the world so that people see who you actually are and what you can do. So it was really about breaking those linear models of education and work and helping people just kind of go into like an exponential space rather than straight up.
So then, why did you come about the idea of taking people international and making your programs internationally and giving them that, because skills can be technically learned anywhere, and a lot of international students, for them, Australia is also international, right? So what was the thought behind that? It's funny. We were a global company. I say global, there was like two of us from day one. So I was working with a guy over in San Francisco. And so straight away we were already like on Zoom, on WhatsApp, like we didn't have an office. So when everybody kind of went remote, I was like, well, that's been us from day one. But I think, I'm a migrant to Australia. I came here when I was very little. So I've grown up here since I was about 4 years old. Also the daughter of 2 international students. They moved from Malaysia to America to study their postgrad. I went to kindergarten in Japan. I just think that this global context helps people figure out who they are. It helps them understand what they're bringing to the world, especially through work. And it helps them kind of see things, identify problems that are bigger than the things that they've just seen around them, right? And so initially it was just like, oh my gosh, let's take some bright students and show them Silicon Valley and maybe they'll be inspired and build things. That was pretty much as deep as it got at the time. And then just as we started researching and asking the students what was helpful and unpicking what was working, it really is this global context, and that's become part of the Hex DNA. So we started launching programs to Singapore. Now we do them in Bangkok, Ho Chi Minh City. We're planning Osaka. We're planning Bengaluru. We really believe in this importance of someone getting a taste of a global culture. But you don't have to get on a plane. I just think that opening your brain up to the world in whatever form that takes, whether it's online or through different friendships, it's just really important for growth and for professional development.
Yeah. And talk us through the journey of actually building it. So you said you were still working full-time at the bank. Did you just take time off to go to San Francisco with these students? Or how did that go? And how quickly were you able to scale to the point where you were like, okay, now I'm going to leave my job?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I was messing around with things for about, I'm going to say 6 months before landing on this idea to go to San Francisco. So I was having a lot of meetings with other founders and other people who had ideas and trying to find what can I bring, who's the person I want to work with. And there was a lot of other startups that I was sort of helping just on the sides. For this particular one, I decided to ask my boss if I could take all of my leave, all my sick leave, all my personal leave, all my annual leave. And then there's a thing called lifestyle leave in some companies where you can choose to take a slightly lower salary and extend your leave options. Pretty good. So I took all of that, and then I took unpaid leave. So I took 3 months off, and he kind of said, you can come back after 3 months. So in some way it was almost like parental leave, I'm going to go birth this startup idea. So I had this incredible boss. He's like, yep, if you need to do this, you can take your 3 months off and come back, it's fine. And then after 2.5 months, he calls me. He's like, are you coming back? I'm like, can I have a bit more time, please? And what we ended up negotiating was for me to come back 2 days a week, which meant I could still get a little bit of money. I could contribute to the team I was still working in and almost wean myself off the corporate salary. And it was just so kind of him to do that for me. I think he will be in my memoirs at some point. He doesn't think it was a big deal. He just thought he was doing a good thing for a person in his team. But it really was life-changing for me. And it took me about 9 months from start to leaving, 9 months. So I did 3 months off, 6 months part-time. And then eventually I was like, I think I'm confident enough that I can at least pay some of my bills with what I'm doing with Hex. So it was a process. And I'll be really straight with you. I still don't pay myself the same amount of money I was getting paid at the bank, but I pay myself enough that I'm satisfied with where I am. So it's an interesting trade-off from climbing a corporate ladder and going, how much more can I get, to what is the minimum I need to survive on so I can build this dream, and like what am I happy with.
That's really interesting to me that you still don't pay yourself as much. Is that intentional? I mean, of course it is intentional, but I would imagine, just from how I understand it, and we can take this off if you don't feel comfortable, you probably have the resources to pay yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I could.
Yeah.
I could. I mean, I do pay myself. I'm not paying myself. But it's more about like, I could choose to pay myself the same level as a corporate salary, or I can choose to reinvest that into the business to grow it. And where we are right now, I think that growing the value of the business is going to have a bigger payoff in the future. So I'm at like an economics and sociology major, so I always think about opportunity cost. And so my opportunity cost of starting the business was the salary I would have earned at the bank. And so I go, well, at the end of the day, when all is said and done with this business, if and when we have an exit or we're taking dividends or whatever it looks like, it has to be equal to the amount of years that I took a lower salary. So I need to think about like, what did I invest from my time and my like salary foregone to get my ultimate exit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I didn't come here to do.
You're in economics too.
Yeah, I didn't come here to do math on a Saturday, guys. Like, I swear. But like, this is sort of, I guess, sometimes the things that we don't think about when we look at the romance of startups and the excitement of startups. So just thought I'd share that for those listeners who might like economics.
But I also feel like in order to do that, you really need to be passionate about what you're doing, and you really need to have a very, very strong why behind why you're building the company you're building, because otherwise it gets really hard to just do that sacrifice, even if you can see the opportunity cost and like you can see the long-term vision. Like, you just really need that very strong why to keep going. So what is it that for you?
For me, my why is I want to help people build the world that they want to live in, right? And that could take the form of providing for their family better, changing some social thing, building a new technology. Like, I think that everyone's got a vision of their future world, and not everyone feels empowered to make it. So I really want to be there to help people build that world they want to live in, because the more of us that are doing that, the better the world becomes.
Yeah. And so through your programs, how do you help them do that? Like, what if someone joins one of your programs and goes to Ho Chi Minh City, for example, like what will they get in the 2-week program that they come for?
Yeah, well, straight away, they stop being students and immediately they're founders. So from day one, we treat them like founders. We take them through a process where they actually look at themselves and what they care about and what they believe in, and then we kind of build their sort of business idea around that. So people have done everything from dinner, social, series parties, all the way through to crypto projects and whatever they care about. We help them structure it in a way that could be a sustainable business model. So they meet investors, they'll go visit professionals, they'll have Q&As with founders. We do a lot of immersion or like exposure therapy, like getting them like into corporate or just watching what other professionals do. There's networking events, they get to pitch to investors. They learn a whole lot of new technology just during the program, just by osmosis, I guess, because we kind of just make them do it. And so really we've had feedback that people get more out of the 2 weeks with us than they get out of an entire business degree, because it's just so real. It's like we drop them into the middle of their career. We'll just go. And that empowerment is just really special. Plus they get friends, like it's awesome cohort friendship. They get to travel.
And then they know that you're there holding their back, like you're there for them to support them.
Yeah, you kind of got this like scaffold safety net thing, because I think a lot of people want to try this stuff. They're just not quite sure where to start or how to have that first conversation. So I think if we can ease that transition, open the door and say, we got you, it's okay. And then kind of just really give them that push and support. It's really cool to see how people transform. And actually the cool thing is we've got academic credit aligned to the programs as well. So if they do it while they're at uni, they can usually get a whole subject credit for their degree. So that was actually one of the game-changing things we did at the business at Hex to make it different from other programs.
I actually really like that, because when I was in uni, like I chose University of Melbourne to do my degree, because when I was looking for just studying anywhere, I was looking for where I can go for exchange so that I can travel more when I'm going to Australia.
Nice.
And like if I would have the opportunity to do this program when I was in uni, I would definitely do it and get credits for it.
Get credit. It's so, I mean, I just figure like you're already there, you're already spending money, like you need to get the time. So we do it shorter, faster, like more fun. And we've got credit with the University of Sydney, so that can be translated to most universities in the world because it's a top 20 global uni. Yeah, and it's just a lot of fun. I reckon 30% of our students are international students, and if not more. And we've actually got some alumni that are international students that now give scholarships back for international students because they believe in it so much. So it's actually really cool. We've been around now for 7+ years, and so some of our early students are actually successful professionals, founders. So they give back.
That is so good.
That is amazing. If there's a person who wants to build a business and they're just like, I really want to do this, but I don't know what to do. I have all these different ideas, but I don't really know what's going to be successful. What steps would you recommend they take to go find their winning idea?
I mean, I think there's not always just like one idea, just like there's not always like one perfect soulmate for you, right? Like you could be successful in multiple different things. I would start with what do you actually care about? So to your point before, is this going to connect with your why when things get hard? Or are you just going to say, I actually don't care that much? So something you care about, something that you have the intersection of like a little bit of experience or skills that you can maybe make a difference. Like maybe it's you grew up in a particular way that you have lived understanding of the problem. So just really looking for a problem that you can either research or resonate with. And then I think I would start by giving it oxygen. So I think the worst thing a potential founder can do is just ruminate on their idea and never give it oxygen. I think the more you talk about it, the more you give it life. You give people the chance to give you feedback. Even if you're scared of them giving you negative feedback, like you have to build that resilience muscle. Like just listen to what people say, not just your family and friends, like tell a random, tell an Uber driver, tell the person at the pub, like tell your professor, like whoever you meet. If you can test it, market research from day one is the best thing to do because then you learn faster, and then the most important choice you can usually make is the first person you work with. So whether it's your co-founder, your employee number one, the person you hire to do your brand, like the first person you choose to work on your business is usually the biggest test of like whether it's going to be good because like it actually shows your strength as a founder to convince someone about your idea, and B, it means that you kind of have like, you start to get this amalgamation of brains building something. So so people, market research, and just learn as fast as you can. Yeah,
that's really good. So if someone was on this entrepreneurship journey and do you feel like there's a certain type of mindset that takes to be a successful founder? And if it is, like, what would you say it is?
I think one of the most important mindsets to be a successful founder is done is better than perfect, especially as somebody who was raised in a perfectionist kind of household going for the straight A's, getting used to just taking one tiny step towards my goal versus thinking about it forever. Done is better than perfect. Action beats ruminating, like always take action.
That's so good because we were just interviewing the founder of Dropout Chaiwala before this, and he said that you just need to start because there's never a good time to start. Like it's always now.
Yes,
like, you just gotta start now. And like there was another guest we were interviewing a few weeks ago, and they were also like, practice makes better. Practice doesn't make perfect. So the more you do something, the more you improve at that. And like there's no such thing as perfect. So you'll never. If you go from the mindset of that I have to be perfect before I start, like you'll never start. Like
exactly right. I think those people give really, really good advice. I always think about this bias to action. If you're in 5 years' time and you look back, would you have rather learned for 5 years or talked about it at brunch for 5 years? Like, how far can you go in that time, right? And so for me, that was actually part of my decision to start the business was in 5 years' time, if I look back and I just tried to build my corporate career and I had these other ideas, would I be annoyed with myself? And the answer was yes. I was like, well, then I've got to do it. I've got to start now. But it wasn't the first thing ever that I built. It was like I tried a bunch of little entrepreneurial experiments while I was still working. And I think that's the art of the side hustle, right? The art of just teaching yourself how to be entrepreneurial, and your first idea doesn't have to be the big idea. And in fact, this probably might not even be my big idea. Like I might have more, you know. So
I agree with that, because when you're doing something, you have to back yourself so much, because people around you will push you, but you have to have such high level of self-trust that I'll be able to do it. But you don't have that from the start, right? You have to build that as you go. And as you said, that you had a lot of previous entrepreneurship projects to experiment with, that you built that little self-trust before Hex, right? Do you mind walking us through that journey?
Sure. There was a couple of just very little things. So like the smallest thing I could do at work was maybe just organize lunch and learn events, you know, things that no one asked me to do. But I said, I think that this speaker that I met at this event would actually be great for my team. And then just did the things internally to say, we're bringing this person in for a lunch and learn. Like really simple, but in a way you're kind of breaking the mold because no one actually asked you to do that and you just thought it was a good idea. So really tiny. Then the next thing was like, well, I'm actually quite good at doing things like writing resumes and updating LinkedIn profiles. And then I started helping my friends for free. And eventually I told someone that I could help them if they paid me. And then they paid me. And I was like, whoa, I just made like $300 to help somebody on their LinkedIn profile. And that moment I was like, okay, I got my first like check from doing something that was outside of work. So that's another little step. And then my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, we launched this event called the Gingerbread Demolition, which was actually a party in our house where we were smashing little gingerbread houses for fun with like rolling pins and things. And he's like, what if we made this bigger? And I'm like, yeah, we could make this bigger. So the next year we rented an event space. We got sponsors, like we ended up getting a real estate agent to auction off a gingerbread house, and we raised money for Save the Children Australia. And so as you can see, these little activities, they just build and build. Like it all comes down to, can you rally people? Can you come up with an idea and execute it? Can you get support for an idea? Can you make people buy something? All of these are tiny little checkboxes in your entrepreneurial journey. And so anyone who's done anything like student clubs, events organizing, starting a podcast, starting a blog, content creation, e-commerce, like any little thing is adding up to your entrepreneurial journey. And then when I was building Hex, I could lean on some of those skills that I had gained. And now if I think about going back and doing gingerbread demolition today, I would have so many more like skills and networks to lean on. But yeah.
It makes complete sense. It also sort of builds trust every time you do one of these things, because you're like, I think I can do this. It can be really tiny. And you do it and you're like, wow, I did it.
Exactly.
You know? And it goes from there. So 100%. Like even like I keep telling Sachi, I'm not a very big person on social media, but she sort of forced me to post a first video for the podcast, and we posted it and it went well. And I was like, we can do another one. Like it doesn't feel so scary anymore. And and the same thing applies to different areas of life. So
it's like going to the gym. Like you just work out a muscle, you tear it a little bit, you go again. Like you just build your strength. And I think that works for resilience. It works for your work ethic. It works for like business sales size, like selling something for $300 versus a 7-figure deal. Like that's the process, right? But you do it.
Something that you said earlier really sat with me was that you built networks along the way. Even when you were at work, you were doing a lot of meetings with people to figure out different business ideas. And it seems like that's like a big part of your journey, like knowing the right people. But somebody who's an immigrant who's just entered the country may not have that existing network, first of all. And people often that, I imagine myself as an international student when I first came, I only know other people who are in the same journey as me. We're all just trying to get through the degree, figure out a visa situation, all that. But a lot of people who are immigrants have ideas bigger than that. They do want to, build a startup or choose a path which is not the traditional path which is usually set out for you. How would you recommend they start with building that network?
it sounds really cliched, but you have to go to events. Like, I know that sounds scary, especially for a generation that's grown up like digitally, and but getting in front of people, showing up again, and not just being a one-hit wonder, builds your credibility. It builds your network as fast as you possibly can. So anything from student club events to, startup events. So follow Hex on social media, follow other startup kind of groups on social media. Actually show up, maybe just listen the first few times, but you'll start to recognize faces, names. It's so fine to go and like introduce yourself to random people at events. I know that's super scary. Volunteering at conferences is a great way to do things, so keeping an eye out for those opportunities. It's really just every conversation adds up, right? And I think my tip is every time you meet someone and you tell them kind of what you're interested in or what you're looking for, always ask them if they know someone else that you can meet, because most people will say yes. So if you rock up to somewhere and they go, what brings you here today? And you go, I'm just really interested in digital marketing and I'm looking for maybe some internship opportunities or something. And they said, oh, cool, that's not really what I do, but like, yeah. And you're like, well, do you know anyone in digital marketing I should meet? And I reckon 8 times out of 10, there'll be someone either at the event or someone they can refer you to, especially if you're just polite about it and not creepy about it. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but you just have to get out there. And unfortunately, even hackathons is a really good time. Unfortunately, you can't just sit at home and hope that the network will come to you. You have to look for it.
I agree with that. Like, I am someone who used to be so low on confidence when I moved here. And it was mostly because I always felt like I was being judged for not having a good English. But then when I moved here, I felt like people here are very accepting and everybody's trying to be better at communicating. And then I started going to more networking events, and especially like when you're at university, there's so many international students also in the same boat as you. You feel like, I'm not the only one. They're also struggling. It's okay. Like, we can all learn together. And then I started going, and even though I would not interact much, I would just show up. I would show up just to build that confidence of just talking to a little bit outside of my culture people. And then I would do it over and over again. And then slowly I built the art of asking questions, being curious about what the other person is doing, and also learning about myself, what I'm interested in. And then I felt like when you're going to networking events, rather than just talking about work, if you talk about life, like what you are interested in life, and what are your passions, and what is something that you're so interested in doing outside of just your 9-to-5 job or like just everyday work stuff. I felt like that was so powerful to actually build like deep relationships with people, which is not just professional, it's also more than just transactional relationship, if that makes sense.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And now look at you, like you're able to kind of like go and reach out to guests and run this media channel, and I think it's really amazing. So I think all of that, just like, it's that exposure therapy, what you just described, like physically putting yourself in an uncomfortable room and just going, I'm just going to be here. I'm just going to be here for the hour. And that's actually what we do at Hex, is we put people in the room with AI scientists at Google. They just have to physically be there and listen and talk and interact. And all of a sudden you can go home and go, oh, I just did that. That's cool. And this is kind of the theme, I guess, of what we're talking about. Just little tiny steps add up, and never underestimate how important they can be.
Yeah, I agree. I have a journal brand, which is like a self-love and growth journal.
Okay.
And in that, there's a section that helps you build self-love, self-confidence, and self-trust. And I have an activity where I've built like a jar there. And I'm like, every time you do something outside of your comfort zone, come back and write that I thought that I would not be able to do this, and I did it. And this is like your proof that you did it this time. And then when next time you feel the same way, you have proof building up in that jar that this is the time you felt like you couldn't do this, but you did it, and this so you can do this.
So it's like a visual representation.
Quite literally.
Cool. I've never thought of doing that before. It's a great idea.
Right?
Yeah, really good idea.
So when someone is going through your program, right, when they're in the very early stages of their journey, a lot of the times when you see someone and in your mind you think like, oh, I feel like this person has a really huge potential to build their building. It's usually very internal. You don't say it out loud, why do you think that happens in your head sometimes with certain type of early stage founders?
Oh, you're asking about how can you tell if someone's going to hit it okay, that's interesting. I mean, I'm not an investor right yet in founders. Of one day I will be. But I think we do develop this kind of sense of who is likely to be successful in what they do. One of the biggest markers for me, a green flag, is the ability to take on feedback. Another green flag is somebody who is super obsessed with the problem that they're trying to solve and like what the gap is, like what the world could be, So I think that's a green flag rather than someone who just has an app idea or a product idea without actually knowing what problem it's solving in the world. And the other one is that they're just like really sort of good at, they ask really good questions. So they're always questioning kind of like themselves. I think that sense of, it's a kind of a blend of confidence and curiosity, But others, I don't know, others are just really focused. Like you get people that come in and they say, I'm going to do this, and they execute every single time. So yeah, curiosity, quiet confidence, execution, feedback. Like you start to see these blends of skills, and that's when you go, okay, I think this person's got something.
So it's a really good balance of the kind of mindset that they have and the skill set, but also knowing your why. Because when you said obsessed with the problem, I felt like you could only be obsessed with the problem if you feel so passionately about that problem, is when you can be like, I just like, the only reason I'm doing this is because I really want to solve it. And it's true.
It's true. But I do also want to bust the myth, and I think I had this issue in my 20s a lot, was that I was like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Like I had that a lot when I was younger and just trying to figure out like, am I doing the right thing? Am I working in the right field? And I think that it's really, when you do get some space to interrogate not just what bothers you about the world, like what makes you angry, but what inspires you about the world, and what do you specifically know from your upbringing and your life that no one else knows? Like that's kind of how you end up finding that problem space that you can work in. So I guess for me, like something that makes me angry is inequality in leadership and people making stupid decisions when they're in charge of government, business, whatever. So that makes me angry. Number two, the thing that inspires me is watching someone like come into their potential and really just light up because they've realised something about themselves that's really amazing. And, I guess my unique lived experience is just having moved around so much when I was younger, being quite global, having this sort of work ethic drummed into me about like what could be. And so, yeah, you just like combining those things ends up with this business, which I never intended to start really. I didn't intend to be in education. I always thought I'd be in more like finance, but education seems to be the how, because it's the skills, it's the networks, it's the mindsets, as you say. And so, that's kind of how I ended up here.
Yeah. I have a question about what sort of mindset do you see as being common in successful founders? So obviously we talked about early stage founders who have an idea and you're like, oh, this should be fine. But I'm assuming you've been in the startup ecosystem long enough and you've sort of met a lot of people who are founders. Are there common traits you've seen amongst them, or is it just a big mix?
It is varied. But I do see quite a common sense of generosity in founders who are successful. And I think that links to network and curiosity, right? So if you've come through the war zone of being like an early stage founder and you've managed to be one of the few that survives to like scale up, you tend to want to help others. Most people do, actually. I think the startup space is quite generous. People do want to help. They want to share their experiences. And I think that that's a really nice trait. I'm just trying to think about like the successful founders I know. It's definitely a mix. And there are certainly the ones that are the genius a-holes, you do get those ones. Yeah. And my goal, hopefully, is to train up a generation that isn't that. And then you get the ones who are really purpose-driven and who want to have an impact beyond just the revenue. And so those are my people, the people that actually care about not just how much money I'm making, but how am I doing it? How do I treat my staff? What policies do I have in place that make my business a good place to work? How do I influence government clients? So I think people that understand sorry, this is a long answer, but people who understand the power of being in business, and like they make every decision count. Those are the people that I want to see being successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because you said earlier about, I want to see in 5 years' time if I've sort of made enough as I would have made in the corporate job. But then there's the other aspect of it, right? You've made so much impact in the world just through Hex. You've impacted so many lives, and they will then impact so many other lives. So I think that's a really good way to even figure out, okay, fine, even 1 year from now, you've been doing this podcast for a year's time, and we've made some money out of it, but we've also been able to have an impact with people. And I guess that's a really good way to even value that journey.
It really is. And I think every individual is going to have their own way to measure success. It's really up to each person. And for me, it does include, have I impacted other people's lives? Can they then pay it forward? And there's that ripple effect. If I track back to the economics thing, I kind of go, did I help grow GDP? Like, did I increase... did I increase the economic growth?
How it all comes back to the economic side of things.
Yeah, I mean, my dad would love this because he's actually he's an economist, and I reckon that's what I got it from. But because I want, if we look at the students that we've helped learn about business and then they've started businesses, we know 1 in 5 of our Hexies have done either a business or a social enterprise, that they've started something, which is amazing. And then of the ones that have started, half of those have hired other people. So that's job creation straight up, right? And so if I can start tracking that and go, we've actually created jobs, new jobs that didn't exist before, purely by educating and connecting people, like that's good stuff. I don't mind if that's part of my legacy when I, when I'm an old lady.
That's lovely. And if there was one piece of advice that you'd have to give to your younger self, knowing everything you know about business now, what would that be?
I would tell my younger self that you are ready before you think you're ready. So you don't have to wait for one more accolade, one more degree, one more course, one more thing. You're ready to start what you need to do, and just get going, because the world needs you sooner than you think it does.
That's a beautiful place to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find you and Hex, where can they find you?
I am everywhere on @Jeanette_KC, and then the business is everywhere @StartWithHex. So I would love to welcome some new friends on all the socials, and this has been a really great chat. So thank you so much for having me, both of you.
Thanks for coming. Like, subscribe, people. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.